Pop.
It's my house, come on, turn it up.
It's The Drive.
Hear a knock on the door and the night begins. Cause we've done this before, so you come on in. Make yourself at my home, tell me where you been. Pour yourself something cold, baby, cheers to this. Sometimes you gotta stay in, and you know where I live. Yeah, you know what we is. Sometimes you gotta stay in. Welcome to my house, baby, take control now.
I'm Paul Van Wagner. Brian C. Reed is in the other studio taking your calls at 866-961-1430. 866-961-1430 is the number to call. You can also text us. The AA automatic transmission text line is open and ready to serve you. That number is also 866-961-1430. Are you ready for this, Brian?
Oh, yeah.
Can't keep my hands to myself. No matter how hard I'm trying to,
Scott Nason.
I won't
Scott.
hold to myself.
Scott Nason.
Scott.
I love Scott like a love song, baby. When you're ready, come and get
Scott Nason.
Scott.
Scott Nason. Scott Nason. Scott Nason.
Absolutely, let's go.
Scott Nason joining us today. How are you, my friend?
Doing great, Paul, on this Monday. I still chuckle at that intro. It gets me every time. Nice stuff. Nice stuff.
Brian does good work. There is no doubt about that. Absolutely. So I need to, I guess, confess something here to everyone. And I feel like I need Scott here while I do this as kind of my moral support, my crutch, if you will. Mm-hmm. On Saturday,
Let it out.
I sat down. I think it was Sunday. On Sunday, I sat down in my comfy red chair, and I fired up the World Cup Championship game, and I watched it.
No.
I did. I didn't watch from start to finish because I finished watching the Djokovic Wimbledon match, and then I switched over to the World Cup final. But Scott Nason, I watched soccer.
I'm very proud of you, Paul, and I'm glad you clarified Sunday instead of Saturday, because
Yes.
if you sat down for the first time to watch the third-place match between Belgium and England, I would have been very disappointed. But you at least saw some entertaining action on the pitch as far as goals. We saw some pitch invaders. You had presidents and prime ministers in the crowd. It was a great final, and certainly France proved that they were the best team throughout this tournament. It was definitely, I thought, 4 years ahead of schedule. I thought France would really be good in 2022, but boy, did they prove they were good in 2018, and yesterday they showed just why. So congratulations to you, sir, for getting through at least part of a soccer match.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the majority of the first. Well, I don't know if the majority of the first half, a good portion of the first half, and then I watched all of the second half of the match. So, and you know, interestingly enough, when you look at the total numbers, and I know I sent you all of the information this morning, Scott. When you go through and you start looking at all of the total numbers, most goals in the third most goals scored in a single World Cup in this World Cup. The fewest, I think it was, 0-0 contests. So for those people like myself whose argument for not watching soccer is, look, soccer's boring, nobody scores, it's just kind of dull. This World Cup definitely would have proven individuals like myself wrong if we cared.
Yeah, it really would have, because you mentioned the goal scored. It wasn't the most goals ever scored, but it was close. It was two behind Termes, which had the most goals scored, including in 2014. But it was when those goals were scored. There were so many of the goals that were scored in extra time or late matches. We had a lot of comebacks, which you just don't see a lot of in soccer. And was really glad that the final match, which we haven't seen a whole lot of classics over the years in the last few World Cup finals. I wouldn't say this was a classic, but it was a very entertaining game to watch because Croatia really held the advantage as far as possession. They're an attacking squad, but boy, does France have some talent, and did they capitalize on their opportunities, winning their second ever World Cup going back to 1998 when they hosted it, and they won their first one. So, yeah, there was lots to like about this tournament. There was only, I think, 2 0-0 draws and a lot of excitement, a lot of comebacks. And I think overall, I think I said it last week, I'll say it again, it was the best World Cup that I've seen.
I'm probably going to butcher his name, so please correct me if I do, or I should say when I do. But France's Kylian, is it Mbappe? Mbappe. Okay. Youngest French scorer in World Cup history, joins Pele as the only teenagers to score in a World Cup final. Is this young man the future of not just French soccer, but potentially soccer in general?
He's the now of soccer because he has a World Cup, unlike Ronaldo and Messi. And boy, did he have a coming out party this World Cup, scoring 4 goals and just entertaining those that are watching him, at least that are in the crowd, not maybe on defense. I mean, this guy is fast. He's making $20 million a year. You look at the contract with some of the American athletes there. LeBron James, he was only making $1 million a year, I think, his first year. Bryce Harper, he was making $500,000 his first year. This guy's 19 years old, making $20 million a year, which is going to go up, playing for one of the best clubs in Europe, Paris Saint-Germain, and he has a World Cup. And this guy is loving life, and he's going to be around for a long time. He is not just the future, Paul. He's right now.
And he seems like, from what I have seen and what I have heard, like a really decent young man, too. Like, that's the other thing. Like, he's not a bleep hole about the fact that, you know, I'm really good at soccer and I'm rich.
And let's hope that continues.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to be that way now, but it's going to be harder in the future when he's, you know, getting a lot more accolades. But I agree. He has a lot of character. Seems like he's a good guy, and, you know, he's good for soccer. Soccer needs more guys like Mbappe around to, you know, try to extend their reach into the United States. Because, again, soccer still in this country is secondary to the 4 major sports. It may always be that way, but a tournament like this, and you get players like this, it starts to, you know, make a little bit of inroads. We're seeing it with the MLS and the communities that it's there. So soccer definitely didn't get hurt by this World Cup, especially here in the United States.
What has to happen in the U.S. for soccer? Look, it's never going to be the NBA or the NFL, but what does it have to do in order for it to become a sport where at least the U.S. men's national team can compete, maybe not even at the level of a Brazil, a Germany, or the U.S. women's squad for that matter, but at least let's talk about getting to a semifinal. Let's talk about getting through a quarterfinal. Let's talk about qualifying for the damn tournament. What has to happen for the U.S. to get to some sort of point of relevance where teams look at the U.S. and go, oh, crap, we got to play the Americans now?
And that's been the $500,000 question for some time. And, again, really disappointing this year not making the World Cup. But I think in hindsight, that might be a blessing, as much as it doesn't seem like it is now. It's going to force the U.S. Soccer Federation to pour more money into youth development and programs, which we saw a country like Iceland do a few years ago, and they were rewarded by making the World Cup. I mean, you look at this Croatia squad. You know, Croatia, not exactly a hotbed of soccer. I mean, they have some good players. There are only 4 million people in the country of Croatia. That's half the size of New York City.
Right.
So it can be done, but it's going to be developing these youngsters at an early age because, obviously, in the United States, you have a lot more competition for the best athletes than you do in Croatia or Iceland or Europe or South America, where the premier athletes more than likely are going to be playing football or soccer, if you will. In the United States, not so much. You're going to probably have more that play the other 3, if not 4 sports, including hockey. So they're going to have to pour some money in to some development and getting more and more maybe suitable coaches at the lower levels, not having the parents coach as much, but getting actual coaches that, and no offense to the parents because a lot of them do know a lot, but, you know, getting quote-unquote semi-professionals into the youth development. I have a hard time seeing it will be done, but you know what? You got to at least try, especially come 2026 when the U.S., Canada, and Mexico will host the World Cup. The U.S. has to perform well in that tournament.
Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned the athletes, and it feels like soccer players are kind of a group in their own. And I'm going to use a reference here locally. Blacksburg High School, one of the top 5 high school programs in the nation as far as soccer soccer is concerned on the boys' side. If you look at that team, really, there might be one or two-sport athletes. The rest of that team all play soccer all the time. Is it one of those sports, Scott, where you really kind of have to dedicate yourself to, look, I'm a soccer player, not I'm an athlete?
I think it is, and you're seeing that more in a lot of the other sports, locally here, hockey, where the hockey players used to play 2-3 sports. Now a lot of times they just play one, and they're playing it in the summer and in the fall and in the winter, and that's something that, if the U.S. is going to compete on the levels of the Englands and the Frances and the Brazils and the Croatias now, they're going to have to identify these athletes early and put a lot of training and money into getting, the next big thing. It can happen. I mean, Mbappe's 19 years old from France. It can happen. I mean, it's not impossible. We have great athletes in this country. But again, soccer here in another month might be forgotten a bit after this World Cup. It's keeping it relevant, expanding the MLS, which, is getting better players towards the end of their careers, where the MLS needs to do is try to get better players that are in the peak of their careers are getting there.
Brian, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Scott Nason actually has something in common with Croatia's Luka Modric.
Oh, what is that?
They both have won the Golden Ball Award. I don't know. Yeah, Scott won his for a different reason.
I wonder what for.
Well,
sounds slightly provocative.
It is. Scott, would you like to tell us?
No, we'll just move on with the gentleman from Croatia. Thank you very much.
All right. Modric wins the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player. Different from the Golden Boot, though.
That's right. The Golden Ball is kind of like the MVP of the tournament, which doesn't normally go to a guy that's won the World Cup. Matter of fact, I think the last 5 times it's gone to a player that hasn't been on the championship, where the Golden Boot is the best goal scorer, I believe, in the tournament.
Yep.
That goes to Harry Kane, the first English player, rather, to get it since 1986.
Now, obviously, if you're Harry Kane, you want to win a World Cup. Is winning the Golden Boot a good, I guess... What is the term I'm looking for? Like a secondary
Booby prize?
A booby prize? Yeah. Is it okay? I mean, or if you're Kane, are you like, whatever? I got the Golden Boot, but we lost.
I mean, it's going to look nice on the mantle there, and obviously it's something that's going to go in the history books. Excuse me. But yeah, I mean, obviously you wanted to win the World Cup, and Kane had a great tournament, but England had to be very disappointed in not making the final.
So Croatia falls. They are one of 7 of the last 9 teams to advance to the World Cup final and lose to someone that has already won a World Cup final. What does Croatia have to do now to get over the hump? Can they get over the hump?
Absolutely. I mean, they have a great squad. Many of these players are going to be coming back. It's going to be a little more difficult for them because now they're going to have the target on their back, maybe, than the team that's not expected to do much. So now they're going to have the pressure of expectations. But, yeah, this Croatia team was fun to watch, and even more fun to watch at the end of the match. I don't know if you stayed around for that, Paul, but when they had the ceremony, it was absolutely pouring rain. You had the FIFA president out there. You had Vladimir Putin out there with an umbrella, but not Croatia's president, Glinda Zabrar-Kitrovic.
Oh.
She was out there in the rain, hugging every player, no umbrella. It was a class act by her. She was wearing the Croatian jersey, and she was a lot of fun to watch. So Putin needed the umbrella, but Miss Grabar-Katrovic, she was all about just enjoying it and congratulating all the players. Thought it was a nice bit of sportsmanship by her.
Absolutely. Looking ahead to the next World Cup, it happens next year. It's the women's side of things. Obviously, the Americans have to be a favorite. When you look at the rest of the draw, is it the USA and everybody else, or are there teams that have closed that gap and are just as good as Team USA?
Well, it's a little different than 1999 when the U.S. was one of the countries really that had developed their women's program. But you're seeing some of the other countries, if you will, having good success. I mean, you look at China. China's always a good team. You've seen Norway. They're always a good team. They're going to have more competition. It's not as easy. Japan, they've won it here in the past. You go back to the 2015, the last Women's World Cup, which was held in Canada. The United States, of course, won, but Japan was runners-up. England and Germany, there are a couple of countries that have improved their women's program. So the U.S. will be the favorites, as they should be, but it's not going to be as easy as maybe years past.
Scott Nason, how can our listeners hear more from you, sir?
We have our sports show, The Game, coming up tonight at 6. You can hear it later on online at thegamesportshow.podbean.com.
Scott, as always, my friend, I appreciate you doing this. Look forward to chatting with you again next week.
Have a great week, gentlemen. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Scott. Scott Nason joining us. Check him out. Seriously, his podcasts are a lot of fun. Quick break. When we come back, a Reddit question of the day next on The Drive.
Carrying the message to other sports junkies.